The night fell over the capital like a heavy curtain, thick with tension, yet quiet enough to let the distant hum of the city serve as a warning. I, Ibrahim Traoré, stood alone in my office, staring at the horizon where the lights of Ouagadougou shimmered faintly against the dark sky. The air was heavy, not with humidity alone, but with anticipation. Tonight, the continent itself seemed to hold its breath. For weeks, I had sensed a shift. Intelligence, reports, whispers in corridors of power, all pointed toward a new kind of threat, a silent invasion that would leave no scars visible to the naked eye but could redefine the sovereignty of Africa itself. They called it progress, innovation, and opportunity. I called it AI-powered colonialism, a force that could shape our economies, our decisions, and even our future without ever firing a single shot. Tonight, I was not just a president. I was a sentinel. A voice for a continent that had endured centuries of being dictated to, yet still carried the fire of resistance in its veins. My steps echoed through the empty corridors of the African Union headquarters. The halls, usually vibrant with activity, were now cloaked in silence, the kind that demands attention. Inside the conference chamber, the African elders were already assembled. They were symbols of the continent's wisdom, experience, and caution. Their presence was formidable, their silence heavier than any speech. I knew that convincing them would not be a matter of rhetoric, but of proof, urgency, and the weight of undeniable truth. I took my seat at the head of the table, my posture calm but commanding. I felt the eyes of the continent, real and symbolic, upon me. This was not a discussion. It was a declaration, a call to awareness, a challenge to tradition, and a plea for action. Gentlemen, I began, my voice steady yet carrying the urgency of the moment. Africa faces a new form of domination, invisible yet absolute, not through armies or borders, but through code, algorithms, and digital influence. If we do not act, this new power will define our people's choices, our nation's futures, and the destiny of generations yet unborn. A tense pause followed. The room, silent moments ago, seemed to lean in collectively, as though the walls themselves hung on every word. I could feel the weight of history pressing down. This was a moment that demanded clarity, courage, and vision. This is not a tale of speculation, I continued, raising a hand to punctuate my point. Global powers are investing in artificial intelligence systems designed to understand, predict, and influence human behavior. These systems are built outside our borders, with objectives that may not align with the interests of Africa. They can anticipate decisions before they are made, shape economies, manipulate markets, and even influence public opinion, all without a single person noticing. A quiet murmur ran through the chamber. My words were heavy, but they needed to be. The gravity of the situation was immense. Some may call this paranoia, I said, leaning forward, my eyes scanning the room. But I call it vigilance. Africa cannot afford to wait while the world scripts its narrative in algorithms we do not control. We must act now, decisively and collectively. We must create systems that reflect our values, protect our people, and secure our sovereignty. The elders exchanged glances, their faces masks of contemplation. I could sense the internal debate raging silently behind each gaze, the tension between tradition and urgency, caution and bold action. This is not a fight with guns or bombs, I continued, raising my voice slightly, letting the words carry the fire in my chest. It is a fight for our minds, our decisions, and our independence. We are entering a battlefield where knowledge is a weapon, foresight is a shield, and unity is the only path to victory. The room remained silent, but I knew the point had landed. Fear was present, yes, but so was understanding. I could see it flicker in the careful nods, the subtle shifts of posture. They were listening. They were weighing. They were preparing to decide. We must establish a continental alliance, I said, my tone unwavering. A coalition that brings together governments, innovators, scholars, and visionaries. A network to safeguard our data, educate our youth, and ensure Africa leads in AI rather than being led by it. If we do this, we safeguard not just our sovereignty, but the dignity of our people. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. This is not science fiction. It is not fear-mongering. It is a strategic imperative. The digital age is here. The power it brings can uplift nations or subjugate them, and we must choose to wield it wisely or be wielded by it. The elders' eyes, previously calm, now reflected the gravity of the situation. They understood that this was bigger than politics, bigger than tradition, bigger than any single nation. This was the future of Africa, and perhaps the world, at a pivotal crossroads. I continued, leaning back slightly. Imagine a continent where decisions are anticipated, where algorithms dictate choices before citizens even know they are making them. Imagine the potential loss of autonomy, culture, and freedom, all under the guise of technological progress. This is a new colonization, subtle, silent, but lethal if ignored. A hush fell over the room. The metaphor was clear, the stakes undeniable. I could feel the elders wrestling with the reality I had painted. This was no longer theory. It was an urgent call to action. Yet, I said, softening my voice, this is not a moment for despair. It is a moment for leadership. Africa has always risen when challenged. From resisting colonial powers to navigating post-independence struggles, we have demonstrated resilience, ingenuity, and unity. Now is no different. I could see subtle signs of acknowledgement in their posture. Caution still ruled, but understanding had begun to seep in. The fire had been lit. The conversation, once theoretical, now carried the weight of possible action. This alliance, I continued, will not seek conflict with the outside world. It will not provoke. It will protect. It will innovate. It will educate. And it will ensure that our people, our nations, and our values are the center of the technological revolution. The room remained silent for a moment, the kind of silence that carries the weight of centuries. Then, without a word, the elders began to nod subtly, a signal that the seed of understanding had been planted. I leaned forward again, my voice low but firm, filled with both fire and purpose. We stand at the edge of a new era. AI-powered influence is not science fiction. It is real, and it is coming to every corner of our continent, whether we prepare for it or not. The choice is ours. We can wait and be shaped, or we can act and shape our own destiny. A soft exhale echoed through the chamber. The elders had heard the warning, and they had felt the urgency. But this was only the beginning. The journey ahead would be complex, fraught with challenges, resistance, and unseen forces. Yet I was resolute. Tonight marks the first step, I said, standing and letting the weight of my presence fill the room. Africa will no longer be a passive observer. We will claim our narrative, protect our sovereignty, and ensure that the technological future reflects our values, not those imposed from afar. As the elders filed out of the chamber, I remained seated, staring at the dimmed lights, the empty table before me, and the unseen horizon beyond. The quiet of the night was deceptive. The storm was only beginning. But in that moment, I knew one truth with absolute clarity. Africa would rise, not under the hand of others, but by its own strength, vision, and unity. And as the night deepened, the first sparks of a new era began to glow, an era where artificial intelligence, leadership, and African sovereignty would collide, forging a future that could either illuminate the continent or test it as never before. The journey had begun. The challenge was monumental. And if the world was watching, it would soon see a continent that refused to be defined by anyone but itself. The sun had barely risen over the horizon, but the weight of the night still lingered in the corridors of power. Africa's heart was stirring, uneasy and restless, yet determined. I, Ibrahim Traoré, knew that what began as warnings and whispers the night before was now accelerating into a storm. The challenge of AI-powered influence was no longer theoretical. It was moving, breathing, shaping the world in ways few understood. I walked through the halls of the African Union headquarters, each step measured, each thought sharpened. The room where the elders had gathered yesterday was empty now, yet the air carried echoes of the tension we had faced. Their cautious nods, their silent acknowledgement of urgency, it was all part of a growing recognition. But recognition alone would not protect Africa. Action was required. The intelligence brief I had received continued to haunt me. It detailed projections, simulated influence campaigns, and potential scenarios where foreign-designed AI could predict elections, manipulate markets, and subtly reshape public opinion across a continent. All fictional, of course, but vivid, dangerous in their possibilities. I convened a smaller circle of advisors, engineers, and youth leaders, those who could translate theory into action. The task was monumental: build an African digital alliance capable of safeguarding sovereignty, teaching our people to understand and control AI, and ensuring that Africa's future would not be dictated by unseen forces. Traoré, one of my advisors, said, breaking the silence, "The challenge is global. Powers across the world are watching. If this alliance moves too fast, it may trigger resistance from places we cannot control." I nodded, absorbing the caution, yet unwavering. Exactly. That is why we must be deliberate, strategic, and united. Africa's response cannot be reactive. It must be proactive. We will shape the rules of engagement before anyone else can dictate them. Our discussions were long, intense, and meticulous. Every algorithm, every network, every digital footprint was analyzed, not as a threat to be feared, but as a battlefield to be understood. The continent's future depended on it. Later that evening, I addressed the media, not in a formal press conference, but through a live broadcast, fictional but dramatized like a breaking news alert. My words were clear, urgent, and provocative, designed to awaken both the continent and the world. Africa stands at the edge of a new era. Artificial intelligence, if left unchecked, can become the new colonizer. It can shape our economies, predict our actions, and influence our societies, all without a single person firing a shot. But this is not a moment for fear. This is a moment for leadership. Africa must rise, together, to claim its future. The broadcast was simulated, but the impact in our fictional scenario was immediate. Across the continent, whispers of a new movement began to spread. Young engineers, tech innovators, and civic leaders discussing how to safeguard their data, how to teach AI with African values, how to prevent the subtle manipulation of their societies. At night, in the solitude of my office, I reflected on the enormity of the challenge. It was not merely about technology. It was about culture, sovereignty, and identity. AI could be used to uplift Africa, but it could also be misused to create dependency, influence behavior, and erode freedom. The line was thin, and we were standing on it, fully aware that missteps could have long-reaching consequences. The elders, meanwhile, had begun to convene among themselves, discussing the implications of my warning. Their debates were heated, cautious, and reflective. They understood the urgency but worried about the pace of change. The continent's history had taught them patience, but history also demanded vigilance. By the second week, the African Digital Alliance had taken form, fictional yet vibrant in its depiction. It brought together technologists, young innovators, and government representatives from across the continent. The goal was clear: monitor foreign AI influence, secure digital infrastructure, and teach African youth how to create systems that reflected our ethics and values. Even fictional simulations suggested immediate challenges. Coordinating across borders, cultures, and languages was a massive task. Skepticism, logistical hurdles, and resistance were inevitable. Yet each challenge fueled determination. Africa's destiny could not wait for consensus. It demanded action. As the movement grew, so did attention from global observers. In this dramatized newsflash, international powers were shown taking notice. Headlines, fictional but striking, flashed across screens. "Oh, Africa mobilizes to protect its digital sovereignty." "Oh, AI as a new form of colonialism, the African response." Traoré's vision sparks continent-wide debate. The stories emphasize Africa's proactive stance, the determination to assert control over its own digital future, and the recognition that the battle was as much about identity as it was about technology. The elders, initially skeptical, began to lend their cautious support. Their speeches, fictionalized yet credible, highlighted the balance of wisdom and innovation. Progress must not erode the soul of our societies. Technology is a tool. Sovereignty is our responsibility. We must guide both carefully. Meanwhile, I address my citizens directly, fictionalized yet cinematic, via broadcasts and digital channels. The future is not something we inherit. It is something we build. AI is here. It can serve us or it can control us. Africa chooses to lead. By the third week, the fictional narrative escalated. International analysts, depicted in the story as observing the African initiative, debated the implications. Would a united Africa in AI threaten existing power structures? Would global corporations adjust their strategies? Could the continent assert sovereignty in a digital age dominated by external interests? All of these questions were dramatized in a fictional, safe way, but the tension was palpable. Each chapter of the story conveyed urgency, the thrill of action, and the stakes of a continent asserting its independence in a field where power was invisible yet potent. Then came the first major internal test. Fictional scenarios suggested that misinformation campaigns, AI-generated simulations of public opinion, were attempting to destabilize unity. It was subtle, messages designed to sow doubt, rumors of dissent, and predictions of failure. But the African Digital Alliance countered with transparency, education, and communication. The lesson was clear. The fight for the future would require vigilance, intelligence, and trust. Through it all, I remained the voice and the guide. My messages, fictional yet compelling, emphasize resilience, empowerment, and strategic foresight. We do not fight shadows. We illuminate them. We do not react in fear. We act in knowledge. Africa's destiny is ours to shape. The tension reached a crescendo during a simulated summit where I addressed a gathering of African leaders and youth innovators. Every nation has a right to its own future. Every citizen has the right to autonomy. And every continent has a right to resist invisible chains. AI can serve humanity, but only if humanity controls it. Africa will not wait to be shaped. It will shape its own destiny. The fictional summit concluded with unanimous agreement. The alliance would expand, new educational initiatives would begin, and the continent would monitor external AI influence with unprecedented coordination. It was a victory, fictional but dramatic, emphasizing leadership, foresight, and unity. Yet even in triumph, the story conveyed tension. The world outside continued to evolve. Simulations suggested new challenges, and the invisible threat of AI-powered influence loomed ever larger. The alliance's work had begun, but the road ahead was uncertain, fraught with complexity and demanding relentless vigilance. As night fell again over the capital, I reflected on the journey so far. The battle was not fought with bullets or bombs. It was fought with vision, courage, and strategy. And though the elders' initial skepticism had been formidable, their cautious support now strengthened our movement. Africa, fictionalized yet vivid, was taking its place as an assertive, aware, and united actor in a new digital era. The first sparks of change had ignited. The continent had begun to rise, asserting control over its destiny. But the storm of AI influence, subtle and pervasive, was only beginning. And as the night deepened, I knew one truth clearly. Vigilance, unity, and foresight would determine whether Africa emerged empowered, or merely shaped by forces beyond its control. And so, the story continued, dramatic, gripping, and entirely fictional, a narrative of African leadership, innovation, and sovereignty in a world where the most powerful threats were invisible, yet the stakes had never been higher. The journey had begun. The challenge was monumental. And Africa, under my guidance, would confront it head-on. The city below glimmered under the night sky, but above, in the chambers of the African Digital Alliance, the weight of history pressed heavier than ever. Weeks of planning, simulations, and strategic discussions had led to this moment. I, Ibrahim Traoré, stood once again at the center, not just as a leader, but as a guardian of a vision that would define the continent's digital destiny. Every step in the Alliance's journey had been a challenge. The invisible forces of AI influence, fictional yet palpable, had tested our resolve. Rumors, simulated manipulations, and whispers of doubt had spread across nations, but we had not faltered. Our youth innovators had mobilized. Our educators had begun teaching the next generation how to understand, control, and create AI with African ethics at the core. And the elders, initially cautious, now lent their silent weight to the movement. Tonight, however, was different. Tonight, the real test of our unity and foresight would be seen, not through debates nor simulations, but through the public eye. Across the continent, citizens were watching. Schools, tech hubs, civic groups, and community leaders were paying attention. This was no longer an internal strategy session. This was Africa asserting its presence in a world dominated by unseen forces. I address the assembly of innovators and leaders, my voice carrying the fire of conviction. We have come far, but the journey is far from over. AI is not our enemy, it is our test. The challenge is not to destroy it, but to master it. If we fail, our future may be subtly shaped without our consent. If we succeed, we will have proven that Africa can rise in the digital age on its own terms, with its own values guiding every decision. A collective nod of understanding swept across the room. Eyes met mine, and I could feel the determination. This was a moment when theory became action, when vision translated into execution. The elders observed quietly, their expressions grave but approving. They had witnessed centuries of history, and even they could sense the magnitude of this moment. No words were necessary. The unity of purpose was evident. Over the following days, the African Digital Alliance launched its first initiatives. The efforts were vast: digital literacy campaigns, public forums, cybersecurity protocols, and AI ethics workshops. Each effort was carefully designed to empower, educate, and inspire. Every citizen reached by these programs became a node in a larger network of awareness, a network designed to resist manipulation, misinformation, and digital domination. Internationally, the story spread, fictional yet compelling. Media outlets, fictional commentators, and global observers depicted Africa's bold movement as unprecedented. Headlines flashed across screens. "Oh, Africa forges digital alliance to safeguard sovereignty." Traoré leads continent against AI manipulation. "Oh, invisible chains, visible resolve. Africa rises." The narrative was dramatic, attention-grabbing, yet fully fictional. It painted a picture of a continent refusing to be shaped by external powers, asserting its voice in a world increasingly influenced by technology. Yet challenges continued. The fictional simulation suggested that foreign AI influence attempts were intensifying. Algorithmic campaigns, subtle manipulations, and predictions designed to sow discord emerged, testing every principle of our alliance. Each scenario forced innovation, resilience, and unwavering unity. I address the team once more. Every challenge we face is a lesson. Every simulated attempt to destabilize us is an opportunity to strengthen our systems. We are not fighting shadows. We are illuminating them. We are not reacting in fear. We are acting in knowledge. The Alliance responded with extraordinary energy. African innovators designed monitoring tools to track AI influence in real time. Civic leaders conducted educational campaigns, ensuring every citizen understood how to recognize manipulation and assert their digital autonomy. Communities across the continent engaged in workshops, debates, and simulations, all fictionalized yet vividly illustrating the story of empowerment. By the final week of the narrative, the fictional climax approached. An unprecedented simulation projected a scenario where external AI influence would attempt to dominate public discourse. This was the ultimate test of unity, foresight, and leadership. And Africa's response, guided by the Alliance, was decisive. We implemented coordinated countermeasures, transparent communication, community engagement, and rapid adaptation of technological safeguards. The simulations, once threatening, began to show our growing mastery. Africa was no longer a passive observer. It was a force actively shaping its own digital narrative. I stood once again at the podium, the culmination of our work reflected in the eyes of every citizen, innovator, and leader in the room. "We have faced the invisible threat and turned it into an opportunity," I declared. "This is the proof that Africa can rise, united and strategic, in the face of challenges that are unseen yet real. We are not waiting for permission. We are not dependent on outside validation. We are shaping our future." The fictional summit ended with applause, but beyond the dramatization, the story conveyed a deeper truth. Leadership, knowledge, and unity were the ultimate safeguards. Technology could be used to influence, but it could also be mastered to empower. Africa, in this narrative, had chosen the latter. As the night descended, I reflected on the journey. From the first warning of AI-powered influence to the full mobilization of the African Digital Alliance, the fictional story had traced a path of courage, foresight, and collective action. The continent, through imagination and storytelling, had risen to face the invisible, asserting sovereignty in a world increasingly dominated by unseen forces. And now, as I conclude this account, there is one final message. direct, clear, and compelling for those who have journeyed with me through this fictional narrative. The story of Africa's digital sovereignty is not just for the leaders or innovators. It belongs to every citizen who dares to imagine a future where their voice, culture, and choices matter. It belongs to those who refuse to be passive, who choose knowledge over fear, action over complacency. If this story inspired you, challenged your perspective, or sparked curiosity about the unseen forces shaping our world, join us in the journey. Subscribe, like, and share this channel. Be part of the conversation. Engage with the ideas. Stay informed, vigilant, and inspired. Because the future is not written, it is created. And Africa, fictional yet vivid in this narrative, shows us that courage, unity, and foresight can illuminate even the darkest paths. So take a moment, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with anyone who believes in shaping their own destiny. Let's continue to explore, imagine, and safeguard the stories that matter, together. The journey may be fictional, but the lessons are real. The fire of leadership, the necessity of unity, and the vigilance against invisible threats. These are truths that can inspire us all. And so, as the lights dim and the narrative concludes, remember this: every action matters. Every voice counts. Every choice shapes the future. Africa has risen in this story, but the principles it illustrates can inspire every corner of the world. Stay aware, stay informed, and always be part of shaping your destiny.